When the sky fell silent, the evening discovery Jake Thompson wiped the sweat from his forehead as he guided his combine harvester through the golden wheat field. The Kansas sunset painted everything in warm amber light, and after 30 years of farming, he still found peace in these quiet evening hours. At 45, Jake had weathered droughts, floods, and market crashes, but his love for the land never wavered. His calloused hands gripped the steering wheel with the confidence of a man who understood machinery, like others understood poetry. The tranquil evening shattered when a brilliant streak of light tore across the darkening sky. Jake stopped the harvester and stepped out, shielding his eyes as something crashed into his north field with a sound like thunder and breaking glass. The impact sent a shockwave through the ground, causing his boots to vibrate against the earth. "What in the Sam Hill was that?" Jake muttered, grabbing his toolbox from the harvester's storage compartment. His practical mind immediately shifted into problem-solving mode. Whatever had crashed might be dangerous, but if someone was hurt, they would need help fast. He jogged across the field, his boots crunching through the harvested stubble. As he crested a small hill, Jake stopped dead in his tracks. In a crater of churned earth and burning wheat stalks lay the most extraordinary machine he had ever seen. It looked like a motorcycle crossed with a spaceship, all sleek curves and gleaming metal that seemed to shift colors in the dying light. Strange symbols glowed faintly along its sides, and wisps of steam rose from vents that definitely did not belong on any Earth vehicle. "Holy cow," Jake whispered, approaching cautiously. The machine was clearly alien in origin, though his mechanics' eye could identify basic components: an engine, wheels, what looked like a fuel system. Different materials, different design philosophy, but the underlying principles seemed familiar enough. A soft groan drew his attention to the far side of the crater. Jake hurried around the smoking wreckage and found her. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. The woman appeared young, perhaps 25, but something about her presence suggested great age. Her skin was pale as moonlight, almost luminescent in the gathering darkness. Long silver hair spread around her head like spilled mercury, and when she opened her eyes to look at him, Jake's breath caught. They were the color of fresh blood, deep crimson that seemed to glow with inner fire. Miss, are you hurt?" Jake knelt beside her, noting how cold the air seemed around her body. She wore a form-fitting suit made of material that looked like liquid shadow, now torn and stained with what might have been oil or something darker. She struggled to sit up, wincing in pain. When she spoke, her voice carried an accent Jake could not place, musical and strange. "My transport. Is it badly damaged?" "Well, it's seen better days," Jake said gently, helping her lean against a nearby fence post. "I'm Jake Thompson. This is my farm. What's your name, and where exactly did you come from?" The woman studied him with those unsettling red eyes. Something flickered across her face as if she was deciding how much truth to reveal. "I am called Zara. I come from far away, very far. My people sent me to find something important." Jake nodded, though alarm bells were ringing in his head. Up close, he could see that her canine teeth were distinctly pointed, almost fang-like. Her skin had an odd quality, as if light did not quite touch it the same way it touched normal things. Most disturbing of all, he realized he could not hear her breathing or detect a heartbeat, despite sitting close enough to notice such things. "What kind of something?" he asked, keeping his voice steady. Zara's expression darkened. "A criminal, someone very dangerous who has been feeding in ways that harm innocent people. I am what you might call a hunter." She paused, seeming to weigh her words carefully. "I track down those of my kind who have lost their way." The pieces began clicking together in Jake's mind. The pale skin, the red eyes, the pointed teeth, the talk of feeding and hunting. He had read enough books and seen enough movies to recognize the signs, even if the alien angle was new. She was a vampire, an alien vampire, to be precise. Most people would have run screaming at that realization. Jake Thompson was not most people. He had pulled calves from difficult births, wrestled ornery bulls, and once spent a whole night talking down his neighbor Pete Hollis from a drunken standoff with the sheriff. Life on a farm taught you that most problems had solutions if you kept your head and did the work. Well, Jake said after a moment, I reckon we better get your bike fixed so you can catch this criminal of yours. Zara stared at him in obvious surprise. You understand what I am? What I represent? I got a pretty good idea, Jake replied, standing and dusting off his jeans. But you seem like the good guy in this situation, and if there's really something out there that's worse than you, then I figure helping you is the right thing to do. He gestured toward her crashed vehicle. Besides, I've never worked on alien technology before. Might be interesting. The midnight repairs Jake's workshop was a testament to decades of fixing everything from tractors to pickup trucks. The walls were lined with tools, spare parts, and the accumulated wisdom of a man who could make almost anything run again. Under the bright fluorescent lights, Zara's space bike looked even more extraordinary and damaged. The power core is fractured, Zara explained, pointing to a cylindrical component that pulsed with weak, erratic light. My people's technology relies on biological energy sources. This device normally feeds on life force to power the propulsion and navigation systems. Jake examined the component with the focused attention he usually reserved for particularly stubborn engine problems. Life force, huh? Like from people? From any living creature, Zara said quietly. But yes, sentient beings provide the most potent energy. It is why my people have such a complicated relationship with other species. And the criminal you're hunting? Zara's red eyes flashed with anger. Vex has been feeding indiscriminately across multiple worlds, leaving death in his wake. My people tried to contain the situation quietly, but his appetite has grown beyond all reason. If he reaches a heavily populated world like Earth, she shrugged helplessly. The devastation would be immense. Jake nodded grimly and returned his attention to the space bike. The technology was incredibly advanced, but the basic principles were not entirely foreign. Energy had to flow from a source to create motion and power systems. The biological component was just one possible fuel source. What if we didn't use biological energy? Jake mused, running his hand along the bike's sleek frame. What if we found another way to power this thing? Zara looked puzzled. Another way? I do not understand. Jake grinned, the expression of a man who had just seen the solution to a complex problem. Sweetheart, you're looking at a species that figured out how to split atoms, harness lightning, and turn dead dinosaurs into gasoline. If there's one thing humans excel at, it's finding new ways to make power. Over the next several hours, Jake worked with the methodical precision that had made him the best mechanic in 3 counties. He carefully studied the alien components, mapping their functions and understanding their relationships. Then, with a combination of Earth technology and creative engineering, he began building bridges between 2 completely different approaches to energy manipulation. The space bike's original bioenergy conduits were rerouted through a modified truck alternator. Its exotic propulsion system was supplemented with components salvaged from a motorcycle engine. Jake welded, wired, and calibrated with the patience of someone who understood that the best repairs were built to last. Zara watched in fascination as Jake worked. Your species, she said during one of his brief breaks, you do not fear the unknown. On my world, we are bound by tradition, by the old ways of doing things. We never considered that alternatives might exist. That's the thing about humans, Jake replied, adjusting a power coupling with delicate precision. We're too stubborn to accept that something can't be done, and too curious to leave well enough alone. He gestured at his hybrid creation. Sometimes, being too dumb to know when to quit works in your favor. As dawn approached, Jake made the final connections and stepped back to admire his work. The space bike hummed with quiet power, its alien components now harmonizing with human engineering in a symphony of controlled energy. Instead of the unstable biological glow it had displayed before, the vehicle now emanated a steady blue light that spoke of reliable, sustainable power. Try it now, Jake said, wiping grease from his hands. Zara activated the control systems with obvious nervousness. The space bike responded immediately, lifting smoothly off the workshop floor and hovering with perfect stability. She stared in amazement as readouts displayed power levels far more consistent than anything she had experienced with bioenergy systems. "This is remarkable," she breathed. "The energy flow is clean, sustainable. My people have been dependent on biological feeding for millennia, but this—" She turned to Jake with something approaching awe. "You have shown us a path to freedom from our vampiric nature." Jake shrugged modestly. "Just used what I had lying around. Your bike's computer should be able to analyze my modifications and share them with your people. Maybe they can find their own ways to adapt." As Zara prepared to leave, she paused and looked directly at Jake. "Why did you help me? You knew what I was, what dangers I represented. Most beings would have run or tried to destroy me." Jake considered the question seriously. "Well, I figured you were probably something dangerous, yes, but you were also someone far from home who needed help." He smiled. "That's what we do. Humans help first and ask questions later. Usually gets us into trouble, but sometimes it works out pretty well." Zara smiled, and for the first time, her pointed teeth did not look threatening. They looked sad, tired, like the remnants of something she might not need to carry much longer. "Your species may not be the strongest or fastest in the galaxy," she said, "but you possess something much rarer, the ability to see possibilities where others see only limitations." She climbed onto the space bike, which responded to her touch like a living thing. "Jake Thompson," she said formally, "you have given my people hope for a future we never imagined possible. That is a debt we will not forget." "Just catch that criminal of yours," Jake replied, "and maybe next time one of your people crashes in a cornfield, they'll remember there are good humans down here worth protecting." As Zara lifted into the morning sky, Jake watched until her form disappeared among the clouds. Then he walked back to his workshop, already planning how to explain the scorch marks in his north field to his insurance company. When darkness followed the dawn, the hunters return. 3 days after Zara's departure, Jake found himself scanning the skies more often than usual. He told himself it was just curiosity about alien technology, but deep down he worried about the strange woman who had briefly entered his life. The thought of her hunting some cosmic criminal across the vastness of space troubled his practical, farmer's mind. He was repairing a fence line when she returned, her space bike descending from the afternoon clouds with barely a whisper. But Zara was not alone. Another figure rode beside her on a similar vehicle, this one crackling with the unstable energy of pure biopower systems. Jake's blood ran cold as he got his first clear look at Vex, where Zara possessed an otherworldly, beauty tinged with sadness. Vex radiated predatory menace. He was tall and angular, his pale skin stretched tight over sharp bones. His hair was white as bone, and his eyes glowed like red coals in the depths of hell. When he smiled, revealing fangs that were clearly designed for killing, Jake felt an instinctive terror that spoke to millions of years of human evolution. "So this is the clever little monkey who helped my dear Zara," Vex said, his voice carrying the cultured accent of someone accustomed to being obeyed without question. How delightfully primitive. Zara landed her bike and stepped protectively between Jake and her quarry. "Leave him alone, Vex. Your quarrel is with me." Vex laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, but sweet Zara, you misunderstand the situation entirely. I have been monitoring your communications with our people. This human has provided you with technology that could render our entire species obsolete." His red eyes fixed on Jake, with predatory interest. Such knowledge cannot be allowed to spread. Jake's mind raced as he began to understand the true scope of the situation. Zara had not just been hunting a rogue vampire. She had been hunting someone who saw the liberation of her people as a direct threat to his own power. If vampires no longer needed to feed on biological energy, creatures like Vex would lose their primary source of control and influence. "The way I see it," Jake said, stepping forward despite his fear, "your main problem isn't the technology. It's that you don't want your people to have a choice. Vex's expression darkened. Choice is a luxury for those strong enough to survive without it. My kind has ruled through necessity for thousands of years. We are apex predators, not scavengers, begging for mechanical scraps. And how many innocent people have died to maintain that rule? Zara challenged. How many worlds have we devastated because we were too proud to consider alternatives? As many as necessary, Vex replied coldly. He gestured dismissively at Jake. This human represents everything weak about lesser species. They build tools because they cannot rely on their own strength. They cooperate because they are too feeble to survive alone. His fangs gleamed in the afternoon sunlight. Allow me to demonstrate the superiority of our natural methods. Vex moved faster than Jake's eyes could follow. One moment he was standing beside his space bike. The next, he was lunging toward Jake with claws extended and fangs bared. Jake had time for one desperate thought, that he was about to die in the most ridiculous way possible. Zara intercepted Vex mid-leap, tackling him away from Jake in a collision that shook the ground. The two vampires rolled across the pasture in a blur of superhuman speed and violence, their alien strength turning the simple farm into a battlefield. Jake watched in fascination and terror as they fought. Vex was clearly the stronger and more vicious of the two, but Zara fought with the desperate determination of someone protecting something precious. When Vex landed a blow that sent her crashing into a fence post, Jake made a decision that probably qualified as the stupidest of his life. He ran to his workshop. The power of human ingenuity. Jake's hands moved with the automatic precision of decades, spent solving mechanical problems under pressure. He grabbed his welding torch, a length of copper pipe, and the experimental power cell he had been tinkering with since Zara's first visit. If vampires were biological energy creatures, then maybe a burst of pure electrical energy might level the playing field. By the time he emerged from the workshop, Zara was losing badly. Vex had her pinned against the side of his barn, his claws at her throat and his fangs poised to deliver a killing bite. Her silver hair was matted with dark blood, and her red eyes had dimmed to the color of dying embers. The old ways are the best ways, Vex hissed. Your human-tainted perspective dies with you. Hey, Vex, Jake shouted, raising his improvised weapon. You want to see what human ingenuity really looks like? He triggered the device, sending a concentrated burst of electrical energy crackling through the copper conduit. The bolt caught Vex squarely in the chest, lifting him off his feet and sending him tumbling across the pasture in a shower of sparks. Vex rolled to a stop near his space bike, smoke rising from his scorched clothing. For a moment, he lay still, and Jake dared to hope that his improvised weapon had been enough. Then Vex slowly climbed to his feet, his red eyes burning with fury. Clever, Vex admitted, brushing dirt from his jacket. But ultimately futile. You have bought yourselves perhaps 30 seconds of life. That was when Zara smiled. Jake, she said, climbing unsteadily to her feet. How long would it take you to modify Vex's space bike to use your power system instead of bioenergy? Jake glanced at the alien vehicle, his mechanic's mind automatically analyzing its construction. With the right tools? Maybe 20 minutes? Why? Because, Zara said, her smile widening to show her own fangs. Vex's bike is currently feeding on his life force to maintain its power systems. If we suddenly changed its energy requirements, understanding dawned on Jake's face. Vex's space bike was not just transportation, it was a symbiotic organism that fed on its rider's biological energy in a carefully balanced relationship. Change that relationship suddenly, and the results could be catastrophic for the rider. Vex realized what they were planning at the same moment. You wouldn't dare, he snarled, moving to protect his vehicle. Sabotaging a hunter's transport is a crime punishable by the same people who sent me to stop you? Zara interrupted. She was already moving toward Vex's bike, her injuries forgotten in the heat of combat. I don't think they'll mind. What followed was a desperate three-way race. Vex trying to reach his space bike before it could be modified. Zara trying to hold him off long enough for Jake to work, and Jake trying to adapt alien technology under combat conditions, while two vampires fought a supernatural battle around Him. Jake's hands flew over the alien controls, his hard-won understanding of hybrid power systems allowing him to work faster than should have been possible. Sparks flew as he rerouted energy conduits and bypassed biological interfaces. Behind him, the sounds of the vampire battle grew increasingly desperate. "Jake," Zara called out, her voice strained. "Whatever you're going to do, do it now." Jake made the final connection and dove away from the space bike, just as its power systems engaged. The result was immediate and spectacular. Vex's symbiotic relationship with his vehicle suddenly reversed, the bike attempting to draw energy from mechanical systems that no longer existed. The feedback loop sent violent electrical discharges crackling over Vex's body, disrupting his supernatural abilities and leaving him writhing on the ground in agony. "Impossible," Vex gasped, his perfect predator's composure finally broken. "You cannot defeat superior evolution with primitive tools." "That's where you're wrong," Jake said, standing over the fallen vampire with his welding torch still sparking in his hands. "Evolution isn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about adapting to change. And humans, we're really good at adapting." Zara approached cautiously, energy restraints materializing in her hands. "It's over, Vex. Your people are already implementing Jake's modifications across our fleet. The age of biological dependence is ending." As she secured the restraints around Vex's wrists, Jake noticed something remarkable. The alien metal seemed to be absorbing and redirecting Vex's supernatural strength, turning his own power against him. Even Zara's people had learned to adapt and improve on human innovations. "This isn't over," Vex snarled as Zara loaded him onto her space bike. "There are others who think as I do, others who will not accept this contamination of our species. Then, they'll learn the same lesson you did," Zara replied calmly, "that cooperation is stronger than domination, and that the future belongs to those willing to change." The dawn of understanding. As Zara prepared to depart with her prisoner, she turned to Jake one final time. In the setting sun, her pale skin seemed to glow with inner light, and her red eyes held depths of gratitude that transcended species boundaries. "Jake Thompson," she said formally, "you have done more than save my life or capture a criminal. You have shown my people a path to redemption. For thousands of years we have been defined by our hunger, by our need to take life from others to sustain ourselves." She gestured at her modified space bike, humming quietly with clean electrical power. "You have shown us that we can be something more." Jake shifted uncomfortably, never comfortable with grand gestures or flowery speeches. "I just fixed a broken machine," he said. "Same as I'd do for any neighbor who asked for help. And that," Zara smiled, "is exactly why your species will succeed where so many others have failed. You see problems as opportunities, strangers as potential friends, and the impossible as merely difficult." She climbed onto her space bike, Vex secured behind her in energy bonds. "The universe is vast and often dark, Jake Thompson, but knowing that humans are out there, building bridges and fixing broken things, makes it seem a little brighter." As the two space bikes disappeared into the evening sky, Jake stood in his farmyard and marveled at how much his world had changed in just a few days. Tomorrow, he would have to repair the fence that had been damaged in the fight, figure out how to explain the scorch marks to his insurance company, and somehow return to the normal routine of farming life. But he knew that nothing would ever be quite the same. Somewhere out there among the stars, an entire species was learning to live without feeding on others, discovering that cooperation could be stronger than predation, and building new relationships with the countless other forms of life that filled the galaxy. And it had all started with a farmer who refused to believe that any problem was truly impossible to solve. Jake smiled, picked up his toolbox, and headed back to his workshop. After all, that combine harvester still needed new spark plugs, and the wheat wasn't going to harvest itself. Some things, thankfully, never changed. In the distance, stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky, and Jake found himself wondering what other broken things might someday fall from the heavens, and what other opportunities for friendship and understanding might be disguised as disasters. He was looking forward to finding out.